They told me it was love. They told me it was protection. They told me that every rule, every restriction, every sacrifice was preparing me for a good life. But what they were really doing was erasing me, piece by piece, until there was nothing left but the perfect shell of a woman who existed only to serve. My name is Amara Johnson, and I am 67 years old. It has taken me a lifetime to understand that the people who hurt me most were the ones who claimed they loved me best. Before I begin my story, let me know in the comments where you are listening from and what time it is. I just want to know I'm not alone in this. And if you feel moved by what you hear, consider subscribing. It helps more people become aware of the reality of family betrayal and the silent suffering so many of us carry. Now let me tell you what really happened. I was 7 years old the first time my mother told me I was being prepared. It was a Saturday morning, and my brothers, Joseph and Daniel, were getting ready to go with my father to the hardware store. I remember standing at the door with my little shoes on, excited to go with them. I loved the smell of that place, the sawdust, the paint, the newness of things waiting to be built. Amara, take those shoes off, my mother said from the kitchen. You're staying here with me. But Mama, I want to go with Daddy and the boys, I protested. My father didn't even look at me. He just walked past, his hand on Joseph's shoulder, already halfway out the door. It was my mother who knelt down in front of me, her face serious, her hands on my small shoulders. Baby girl, she said, and her voice was gentle but firm, those places are not for you. You're a young lady now, and young ladies need to learn different things. We are preparing you for your husband. I didn't understand. I was 7. I didn't have a husband. I didn't even know what that meant really. But I took my shoes off and I followed my mother into the kitchen, where she tied an apron around my waist. One she had made specially for me, smaller than hers with yellow flowers on it. Today you're going to learn to make biscuits, she announced, like it was some kind of prize. Through the window, I watched my father's truck pull away, my brothers' faces pressed against the glass, free and laughing. And I stood at the counter with flour on my hands, learning the first of 1,000 lessons that would teach me my place. That's how it started. Not with one big moment, but with 1,000 small ones, each one building on the last like bricks in a wall that would eventually surround me completely. By the time I was 10, I knew how to cook a full Sunday dinner. I could fry chicken that was crispy on the outside and tender on the inside. I could make collard greens that were seasoned just right. I could bake cornbread that was golden and sweet. My mother would stand over me, watching, correcting, praising when I got it right. A man needs a woman who can feed him properly, she would say. A good meal is how you show love. You're learning to be a good wife, Amara. My brothers learned nothing of the sort. They would come home from school and go straight outside to play. When dinner was ready, they would wash their hands and sit at the table, and I would serve them. Me and Mama would bring the plates, fill the glasses, make sure everyone had enough. Why don't Joseph and Daniel have to help? I asked once when I was 11. My father looked up from his plate, his expression hard. Because they're boys, Amara, they have different responsibilities. You mind your place and don't question what you don't understand. That was another lesson I learned early. Don't question. Don't challenge. Don't speak unless spoken to, and even then, measure your words carefully. The rules multiplied as I grew older. I couldn't go to friends' houses unless my mother had personally spoken to their mothers. I couldn't talk on the phone for more than 10 minutes. I had to be home before the streetlights came on, even when I was 16 and my brothers were staying out until 9 or 10 at night. You're different, my mother would say when I protested. You have a reputation to protect. We are preparing you for your husband, and no decent man wants a woman who's been running wild in the streets. I learned to sew. I learned to iron shirts so there wasn't a single wrinkle. I learned to clean a bathroom until it sparkled. I learned to speak softly, to keep my opinions to myself, to smile even when I was angry. I learned to disappear a little more each day. My sister Ruby was 5 years younger than me, and I watched as the same lessons began for her. But Ruby was different. Ruby was fire where I had learned to be water. When Mama told her she couldn't go to her friend's birthday party because young ladies don't run around with boys, Ruby shouted back, "That's not fair. Michael gets to do whatever he wants." She was 12, and she was right. Our youngest brother Michael was only 10, and he had more freedom than both of us combined. Life isn't fair, Ruby, my mother said, her voice sharp. And the sooner you learn that, the better. We are preparing you for your husband, and this attitude will not serve you well. But Ruby didn't bend the way I had. She fought back, she slammed doors. She cried angry tears instead of silent ones, and she got punished for it. Extra chores, stricter rules, lectures about respect and gratitude. I tried to protect her when I could. Just do what they say, I would whisper to her at night when we shared a room. It's easier if you just go along. But it's wrong, Amara, she would whisper back, her voice fierce even in the darkness. Don't you see that it's wrong? I did see it, but I didn't know what to do about it. I was 17 by then, and I had been so thoroughly trained that rebellion felt impossible. The wall around me was complete, and I had helped build it, brick by brick, with my obedience. That was the year I met Marcus. Marcus Campbell came to our church in the spring of 1976. He was 25 years old, 8 years older than me, and he had just gotten a job as an assistant manager at the textile mill. My father noticed him first. "That's a good young man," Daddy said one Sunday after service, nodding toward Marcus as he shook hands with the pastor. "Got a steady job, respectful, comes from a good family. That's the kind of man who knows how to lead a household." I barely looked at him. I was 17 and in my last year of high school, and honestly, I was more interested in the college brochures my English teacher, Mrs. Patterson, had been slipping into my bag. She told me I was smart enough for a scholarship, that I had a gift for writing, that I could study literature or journalism if I wanted to. But I never showed those brochures to my parents. I knew better. Within a month, Marcus was coming to Sunday dinner at our house. I didn't invite him. My father did. I would serve the meal and then sit quietly while the men talked about work and politics and sports. Marcus would glance at me occasionally, smiling, but he mostly talked to my father. "Your daughter is very well-mannered," he said once, like I wasn't sitting right there at the table. "You can tell she's been raised right." My mother beamed. "We've been preparing her," she said, and I felt my stomach tighten. "She knows how to take care of a home. She's a good cook, she's clean, she's respectful. She'll make someone a fine wife." I felt like a cow at an auction, being evaluated for breeding. But I smiled, because that's what I had been taught to do. After dinner, my mother would send me and Marcus to sit on the front porch while she and Daddy stayed inside. "So you two can get to know each other," she'd say with a knowing smile. But Marcus didn't ask me about myself. He didn't ask what I liked to read or what I dreamed about or what I wanted from life. Instead, he talked about his job, his plans to save money for a house, his ideas about how a family should be run. "I believe in traditional values," he told me one evening, his voice confident and sure. "The man provides and protects, the woman nurtures and supports. That's how God designed it, and that's how it works best, don't you agree?" What was I supposed to say? My entire life had been spent learning that very lesson. "Yes," I said quietly, "I agree." He smiled at me then, and I remember thinking that his smile didn't quite reach his eyes. But I pushed that thought away. My parents liked him. My father respected him. My mother said he was exactly the kind of man I needed. "You're lucky, Amara," Mama told me one night as we washed dishes together. "A man like Marcus doesn't come along every day. He's stable, he's responsible, and he wants a wife who understands her role. This is what we've been preparing you for." "But Mama," I said carefully, I was thinking, "maybe I could go to community college first. Just for a year or two. Mrs. Patterson thinks I could get a scholarship." "A scholarship." My mother's hands stopped moving in the soapy water. She turned to look at me, her face a mixture of confusion and disappointment. "Amara, why would you need college? You have a good man interested in you. Education is important for boys who need to provide for families, but you already have everything you need to know. We've taught you well." I just thought. "You thought wrong," she said firmly. "Marcus is a blessing. Don't be foolish and throw away your future for some fantasy about college. We didn't raise you to be selfish." Selfish. That word hit me like a slap. Wanting something for myself was selfish. Having dreams was selfish. Not being grateful for Marcus was selfish. I never brought up college again. By summer, Marcus had asked my father for permission to court me officially. Not asked me, asked my father. I was informed of the decision at dinner one night, like someone announcing a change in the weather. "Marcus spoke to me today," Daddy said, cutting into his pork chop. "He wants to court you properly, with the intention of marriage." I gave him my blessing. My fork froze halfway to my mouth. Marriage. I was 17 years old, and my future had just been decided without anyone asking what I wanted. "When?" I managed to ask. "His thinking next summer, after you graduate," my father said. "Gives him time to save up for a proper wedding and a down payment on a house. He's a planner, that boy. I respect that." My mother reached over and squeezed my hand. "You should be happy, baby. This is a good thing. This is what we've been preparing you for your whole life." Across the table, Ruby stared at me, her eyes wide with something like horror. She was 12, old enough to understand what was happening. Old enough to see that I was being sold, even if everyone was calling it love. That night, she climbed into my bed after our parents went to sleep. "You don't have to do this," she whispered. "You could say no, you could leave." "And go where, Ruby?" I whispered back. "I don't have any money, I don't have anywhere to go. And even if I did, Mama and Daddy would never forgive me. They'd say I was ungrateful and disobedient. They'd say I was throwing away everything they worked so hard to give me." "They're giving you nothing," Ruby said, her voice fierce. They're taking everything away. She was right. But I didn't have the courage to admit it, not even to myself. The courtship was brief and formal. Marcus would pick me up on Saturday evenings, and we would go to dinner or to the movies, always with a curfew, always with rules. He never tried to kiss me, never held my hand for more than a moment. He was a perfect gentleman, everyone said. But I felt nothing. No butterflies, no excitement, no longing. Just a dull acceptance of what was coming. In February, on my 18th birthday, Marcus proposed. He did it at my parents' house, with my whole family watching. He got down on one knee in our living room and opened a small velvet box with a modest diamond ring inside. "Amara," he said, "will you do me the honor of becoming my wife?" Everyone was watching. My mother's eyes were shining with tears. My father was nodding with approval. My brothers were grinning. Ruby was staring at the floor. There was only one answer I could give. "Yes," I said, and I let him slip the ring onto my finger. My mother hugged me, crying about how proud she was, how happy, how this was everything she'd ever wanted for me. My father shook Marcus's hand and welcomed him to the family. Everyone was celebrating. Everyone except me and Ruby. That night, after everyone else had gone to bed, Ruby came to my room again. She didn't say anything this time. She just crawled into bed next to me and held my hand in the darkness while I cried silent tears into my pillow. I was 18 years old, and my life was already over. We were married on June 15, 1977, 2 weeks after I graduated from high school. It was a simple ceremony at our church, with maybe 75 people in attendance. I wore a white dress my mother had sewn, and I carried a bouquet of daisies from Mrs. Henderson's garden. I remember standing at the back of the church, my father's arm linked through mine, and thinking, this is it. This is the rest of my life. "You ready, baby girl?" Daddy asked, and I nodded because what else could I do? I walked down that aisle with a smile on my face, and I said my vows in a clear, steady voice. I promised to love, honor, and obey. That last word, obey, stuck in my throat, but I said it anyway. Marcus slipped a gold band on my finger, and just like that, I became Mrs. Marcus Campbell. I was 18 years old. We moved into a small 2-bedroom house on the east side of town. Marcus had saved up enough for a down payment, and he was proud of it. "This is our castle," he said the first time he carried me over the threshold. "I provide the house and you make it a home. That's how this works." And that's exactly what I did. I made that house spotless. I cooked 3 meals a day. I did the laundry, the ironing, the grocery shopping. I kept the bathroom sparkling and the floors swept. I did everything my mother had trained me to do. Marcus would come home from the mill at 5:30 every evening, and his dinner would be on the table at 6 o'clock sharp. Pot roast on Mondays, fried chicken on Wednesdays, meatloaf on Fridays. He liked routine, and I gave it to him. "This is good, Amara," he'd say, and that was the extent of his praise. When the food wasn't to his liking, though, he'd let me know. "Too much salt," or "the potatoes are cold," or "my mother makes this better." I learned to take criticism as instruction. I learned to adjust, to improve, to anticipate what he wanted before he asked for it. In public, Marcus was the perfect husband. At church, he'd put his arm around me and smile for the congregation. He'd talk about how blessed he was to have such a good wife. People would tell me how lucky I was, what a good man he was, how well he provided. And he did provide. We had a roof over our heads, food on the table, heat in the winter. By the world's standards, I had everything I was supposed to want. But I was lonely. God, I was so lonely. Marcus didn't talk to me, not really. He talked at me, about his day, his work, his opinions. But he never asked about my thoughts or my feelings. He never asked if I was happy. I don't think it ever occurred to him that I might not be. At night, he'd fulfill what he called his marital duties. It was mechanical, joyless, something to be gotten through. Afterward, he'd roll over and fall asleep, and I'd lie there in the darkness, staring at the ceiling, wondering if this was all there was. I tried to talk to my mother about it once, a few months after the wedding. We were having coffee in her kitchen, and I chose my words so carefully. "Mama, do you ever feel lonely, even when Daddy's right there?" She looked at me sharply. "What kind of question is that?" I thought marriage would be different. I thought Marcus and I would talk more, share more. But most days, I feel like I'm just there, like I'm a housekeeper he sleeps next to." My mother set down her coffee cup with a hard clink. "Amara, listen to me. Marriage isn't about feelings, it's about commitment and responsibility. Marcus works hard to provide for you. He doesn't run around on you. He doesn't drink or gamble. He comes home every night. That's what matters." "But what about love?" I asked quietly. "Love," she said like the word was foolish, "is a choice you make every day. It's in the cooking and the cleaning and the supporting. It's in doing your duty even when you don't feel like it. That's real love, Amara, not the fairy tale nonsense you see in movies." "Is that how you feel with Daddy?" I asked. Her face closed off then, like a door slamming shut. "I feel blessed to have a good man who provides for his family. And you should feel the same way." Now stop this foolish talk before you start believing there's something wrong with your marriage when there isn't. So I stopped talking about it. I pushed my feelings down deeper and deeper, until I couldn't feel them anymore. By the time I was 20, I was pregnant with our first child. My mother was overjoyed. "This is what you were meant for," she said, her hand on my growing belly. "Being a mother. You'll see. This will make everything make sense." I wanted to believe her. I wanted to believe that this baby would fill the emptiness inside me, that being a mother would be enough. I had a daughter. We named her Jessica. She was perfect, tiny fingers, tiny toes, a rosebud mouth. I loved her immediately and completely in a way I had never loved anything before. But Marcus was disappointed. "A girl," he said in the hospital, looking down at her with something like resignation. "Well, we'll try again for a boy." He didn't hold her much. He didn't help with the nighttime feedings or the diaper changes. "That's woman's work," he said. "I provide the income. You handle the home and the children." So I did. I handled everything. I was up every 2 hours to nurse Jessica. I changed her diapers, bathed her, sang to her, rocked her when she cried. I did all of this while still keeping the house clean, the meals cooked, Marcus's shirts ironed. I was exhausted. I was 20 years old, and I was so tired I could barely see straight. Ruby came to visit when Jessica was 3 months old. She was 15 then, and she took one look at me and her face crumpled with concern. "Amara, you look terrible," she said. "When's the last time you slept?" "I sleep," I lied. "Where's Marcus? Why isn't he helping you? He works all day, Ruby. He needs his rest. And you don't?" She picked up Jessica, cradling her gently. "This isn't right, Amara. You're doing everything by yourself." "This is what wives do," I said, repeating the words that had been drilled into me. "This is what mothers do. This is what I was prepared for." Ruby looked at me for a long moment, and I saw something in her eyes that scared me. It was pity. My baby sister pitied me. "Is this really what you want?" she asked quietly. "Is this the life you want?" I didn't answer. I couldn't. Because the truth was I didn't know what I wanted anymore. I had been told what to want for so long that I had lost track of my own desires, my own dreams, my own self. 2 years later, I had my second child, another girl. We named her Michelle. Marcus's disappointment was even more obvious this time. "2 girls," he said, shaking his head. "We'll have to try again." But I didn't want to try again. I was drowning in laundry and dishes and diapers and demands. I was 22 years old with 2 children under 3, and I felt like I was disappearing completely. I loved my daughters fiercely. They were the only joy in my life. But I was so tired. So tired of serving, of cleaning, of smiling when I wanted to scream. And through it all, everyone kept telling me how blessed I was. How lucky. How this was exactly what I was supposed to be doing. But late at night, when the house was finally quiet and everyone was asleep, I would sit at the kitchen table with a cup of cold coffee and wonder, is this all there is? Is this all I'm ever going to be? The answer, I thought, was yes. The years blurred together after that. Jessica started kindergarten, then Michelle. I joined the PTA, volunteered at the church bake sales, kept the perfect house. Marcus got promoted to manager at the mill. We bought a bigger house in a nicer neighborhood. From the outside, we looked like the picture of success. I was 32 years old, and I had stopped recognizing myself in the mirror. My mother came to visit one Saturday in October. She was 61 then, and she'd started moving slower, complaining about her joints. Daddy had passed away 2 years earlier. A heart attack, sudden and final. And Mama had been different ever since. Quieter. More distant. "I'm cleaning out some old boxes from the attic," she said as she sat at my kitchen table, watching me roll out dough for a pie. "Getting rid of things I don't need anymore. There's a box of your old school things. You want it, or should I throw it away?" "I'll take it," I said. "The girls might like to see some of their mama's old papers." She brought it by the next week. A dusty cardboard box with my name written on it in faded marker. I set it in the garage and forgot about it for a while. Life was too busy to look through old memories. But then, one rainy afternoon when Marcus was at work and the girls were at school, I found myself standing in the garage staring at that box. Something made me bring it inside. Something made me open it. Inside were my old report cards, all A's and B's. My high school essays with red-inked praise from Mrs. Patterson. A certificate for winning the school writing contest in 10th grade. I had completely forgotten about that. And at the bottom, wrapped in a faded dish towel, was a book. It was small, bound in cracked brown leather, the pages yellowed with age. I opened it, and I saw my mother's handwriting. Young handwriting from before I was born. It was her diary. My hand started shaking. I knew I shouldn't read it. It felt like a violation. But I couldn't stop myself. I turned to the first page, dated January 3, 1953. My mother would have been 18 years old. "I got accepted to the nursing program at Lincoln Hospital," she had written. I can barely believe it. "Me, Eunice Washington, going to be a nurse!" Mama says it's foolish, that I should be focusing on finding a husband, but I don't care. I have dreams. I want to help people. I want to be somebody. I stared at those words. My mother had wanted to be a nurse. I had never known that. She had never mentioned it, not once in my entire life. I kept reading, flipping through the pages. Entry after entry of her dreams, her plans, her excitement about starting the nursing program. And then, in March of that year, everything changed. I met Samuel Johnson at church today. Mama pushed me in his direction. He's 25, has a good job at the factory. Comes from a good family. He asked to court me. Mama says I should say yes. She says nursing school is a waste of time, that a woman's place is with her husband and children. But what about what I want? The next few entries were full of conflict. My mother arguing with her own mother. My mother crying. My mother feeling torn between what she wanted and what was expected of her. And then, in June, I told Samuel yes. Mama says it's the right thing to do. She says I'm being selfish, thinking only about myself instead of my future family. She says women who chase careers end up alone and bitter. I dropped out of the nursing program today. I cried all the way home. My chest felt tight. I could barely breathe. The entries after that grew sadder. My mother writing about her wedding, about moving into a house with my father, about learning to be a wife. The dreams of nursing faded away, replaced by recipes and housekeeping notes, and eventually, by the time I was born in 1959, barely any entries at all. The last entry was dated September 1962, when I would have been 3 years old. Amara asked me today what I wanted to be when I was little. I told her I wanted to be a wife and mother. It was easier than telling her the truth. Easier than admitting that I gave up everything I wanted because I was told it was the right thing to do. Maybe if I train her properly, if I prepare her well, she won't have to struggle like I did. She won't have dreams to give up because she'll already know her place. That's love, isn't it? Protecting her from the pain of wanting more. I closed the diary and I sobbed. Great, heaving sobs that came from somewhere deep inside me, a place I had kept locked away for years. My mother had dreams. She had wanted more. And instead of fighting for those dreams, instead of protecting me from the same fate, she had done to me exactly what had been done to her. She had called it preparation. She had called it love. But it was betrayal. She had sacrificed herself, and then she had sacrificed me too, rather than break the cycle. I don't know how long I sat there on my kitchen floor, crying over that old diary. But eventually, the tears stopped, and something else took their place. Something hard and cold and clear, anger. I was angry at my mother for not being stronger. I was angry at my father for never questioning the rules. I was angry at Marcus for accepting a wife instead of a partner. But mostly, I was angry at myself for going along with all of it, for never once standing up and saying no. That night, I looked at my daughters differently. Jessica was 12, Michelle was 10. And I realized with a shock of horror that I had already started doing to them what had been done to me. I made them help with housework while their father watched TV. I taught them to serve meals and clean up after others. I reminded them to be polite, to be quiet, to not cause trouble. I was preparing them the same way I had been prepared. I was continuing the cycle. No. I whispered to myself in the darkness of my bedroom while Marcus snored beside me. No more. I didn't know what I was going to do differently. I didn't have a plan, but something had broken open inside me, and I couldn't seal it back up again. The next morning, I called Ruby. She was 27 by then, living in Atlanta, working as a paralegal at a law firm. She had fought her way out. She had broken free of the preparation. Ruby, I said when she answered, my voice shaking. I need to talk to you. What's wrong? She asked immediately, concern flooding her voice. Everything, I said. Everything is wrong, and I just realized it. She listened as I told her about finding the diary, about reading Mama's words, about understanding what had been done to both of us. When I finished, there was silence on the other end of the line. I'm sorry, Amara, she finally said, and her voice was thick with emotion. I'm so sorry that happened to you. But I'm not surprised. Mama did the same thing to both of us. The difference is, I fought back and you didn't. I know, I whispered. I know I didn't fight. But Ruby, I'm doing it to my girls now. I'm doing to Jessica and Michelle what Mama did to me. And I have to stop. I have to do something different. Then do it, Ruby said fiercely. It's not too late, Amara. Change it now, before they're too old. Give them what we never had. But how? I asked. How do I change everything when this is all I know? You start small, she said. You start with one conversation, one choice. One moment of letting them be who they are instead of who you were told to make them. And you keep going, one day at a time. After I hung up, I sat at my kitchen table for a long time, thinking. That diary was still there in front of me, my mother's broken dreams written on its pages. I had a choice to make. I could keep pretending everything was fine, keep following the path that had been laid out for me, keep preparing my daughters for the same life of quiet sacrifice. Or I could break the cycle. It wouldn't be easy. It might cost me everything. But I had to try. The changes started small, so small that Marcus didn't even notice at first. I stopped making Jessica and Michelle help with every single chore while their father sat idle. When Marcus asked why dinner wasn't on the table at exactly 6 o'clock one evening, I told him calmly, I was helping Michelle with her math homework. Dinner will be ready in 20 minutes. He looked at me like I'd spoken a foreign language, but he didn't argue. He just waited. I started asking my daughters what they wanted. What do you want to be when you grow up? I asked Jessica one afternoon while we folded laundry together. She looked at me cautiously, like it might be a trick question. I don't know. What should I want to be? That question broke my heart. She was 12 years old, and she was already asking what she should want instead of what she actually wanted. No, baby, I said, sitting down on her bed. I'm asking what you want. Not what you think you should want. If you could be anything in the world, what would it be? She was quiet for a moment, and then she said softly, I like science. My teacher says I'm good at it. I think maybe I'd like to be a veterinarian. I love animals. I felt tears prick my eyes, but I smiled. Then that's what you should work toward. You're smart enough. You can do it. Really? She looked at me with such hope. You don't think it's... Daddy says girls should focus on. I don't care what Daddy says. I interrupted, and her eyes went wide. I had never contradicted Marcus in front of the children before. You are smart and capable, and if you want to be a veterinarian, then we're going to make sure you get there. I started checking out books from the library about women in science, about women who had broken barriers and achieved things people said they couldn't. I left them on the coffee table where my daughters would see them. I started talking to them about college, about possibilities, about futures that didn't revolve around finding husbands. Marcus noticed eventually. Why are you filling Jessica's head with this college nonsense? He asked one night after the girls had gone to bed. She's going to get married someday. She doesn't need a fancy degree. Maybe she wants both, I said, not looking up from the dishes I was washing. Maybe she wants an education and a family. That's not how it works, Amara. You're confusing her. You're making her think she needs to be something other than a good wife and mother. I turned off the water and dried my hands slowly. Then I looked at him directly. Would that be so bad? If she wanted to be something more. His face hardened. More. What's wrong with being a wife and mother? What's wrong with what you are? Everything. I wanted to scream. Everything is wrong with what I am. I'm empty. I'm lost. I don't even know who I am anymore. But I didn't say that. Not yet. Instead, I said quietly, nothing is wrong with being a wife and mother, Marcus. But it shouldn't be the only choice. Our daughters should have options. Options, he repeated, his voice dripping with disdain. Your mother raised you right, Amara. Don't you dare undo all that good work by filling our daughters' heads with feminist nonsense. He walked out of the kitchen and I stood there, my hands shaking. But I didn't back down. I didn't apologize. That was progress. I started spending more time with Ruby. She would come visit once a month, and she would take Jessica and Michelle out for the day. To museums, to bookstores, to her law office where they could see women working in professional careers. She showed them a different world than the one they knew. Aunt Ruby is a bad influence, Marcus said after one of her visits. Aunt Ruby is successful and independent. I replied, there are worse things to be. He didn't like that answer, but I didn't care anymore. Something in me had shifted after reading that diary. I couldn't unsee what I had seen. I couldn't unknow what I had learned. My mother noticed the changes too. She came by one afternoon and found me sitting at the kitchen table with Michelle, looking through college brochures. What are you doing? She asked, her voice sharp. Helping Michelle explore her options, I said calmly. She's interested in engineering. Engineering? My mother looked horrified. Amara, that's not appropriate for a girl. Why are you encouraging this? I looked at her, really looked at her, and I saw not my mother but a woman who had given up her own dreams and then demanded I give up mine too. A woman who had called it love when it was really fear. I found your diary, Mama, I said quietly. The color drained from her face. What diary? The one you put in my box of school things. The one where you wrote about wanting to be a nurse. About having dreams. About giving them all up because that's what you were told to do. She sat down heavily in one of my kitchen chairs. You had no right to read that. Maybe not, I said, but I did, and I understand now. You gave up everything, and then you taught me to give up everything too. You called it preparing me. You called it love. But Mama, it was betrayal. Betrayal. Her voice cracked. I protected you. I taught you how to survive. No, I said, and my voice was steady even though my heart was breaking. You taught me how to disappear. You taught me that my dreams didn't matter, that I didn't matter. And I'm not doing that to my daughters. The cycle stops here. My mother stood up, her purse clutched to her chest like armor. You're making a mistake, Amara. You're going to ruin those girls, filling their heads with ideas that will only bring them disappointment. Or maybe, I said, I'm going to give them something we never had. The chance to choose. She left without another word, and she didn't come back for 3 months. When she finally did, she was different, quieter, sadder. But she didn't fight me anymore about how I was raising my daughters. The changes kept growing. I enrolled Jessica in an advanced science program at school. I signed Michelle up for a robotics club. I started saying no to Marcus when he expected me to drop everything to serve him. I started having opinions about things beyond the household. "You've changed," he said to me one night, and it wasn't a compliment. Yes, I agreed. "I have. I don't like it." "I know." We didn't talk much after that. We lived in the same house, slept in the same bed, but we were strangers. Maybe we always had been. But my daughters, they were thriving. Jessica's grades in science were exceptional. Michelle won an award for her robotics project. They were confident, opinionated, full of dreams and plans. They were everything I had never been allowed to be. "Mom," Jessica said to me one evening when she was 16, "thank you." "For what, baby?" "For believing in me. For not telling me I have to be someone I'm not. Daddy says I'm wasting my time with college plans, but you've always supported me." I pulled her into a hug, tears streaming down my face. "Always," I whispered. "I will always support you. You get to choose your own life, Jessica. That's my gift to you." It was the gift I had never received, but I could give it to them. That's when I realized I couldn't undo what had been done to me. I couldn't get back those lost years, those abandoned dreams, but I could make sure my daughters never knew that particular pain. I could break the cycle, even if I couldn't free myself from it completely. It wasn't perfect, it wasn't fair, but it was something. And for the first time in my life, I felt like I was doing something that actually mattered. Jessica left for college when she was 18. She got a full scholarship to study veterinary medicine at the state university 3 hours away. The day we moved her into her dorm room, I cried. Not from sadness, but from joy mixed with grief. Joy for her freedom, grief for mine that never came. Marcus barely spoke during the drive home. When we got back to our empty house, Michelle was spending the night at a friend's. He finally exploded. "Are you happy now?" he shouted, his face red with anger. "Our daughter is gone, living God knows what kind of life at that university. All because you filled her head with nonsense about needing an education." "She got a full scholarship, Marcus," I said tiredly. "She's brilliant. She's going to be a veterinarian. Why can't you be proud of her?" "Proud?" He laughed bitterly. "I'm supposed to be proud that my daughter thinks she's too good to settle down and start a family. That she'd rather play with animals than take care of a husband. She's 18 years old," I said, my voice rising. "She has her whole life ahead of her. Why does she need to get married right now?" "Because that's what women do," he shouted. "That's what you did. That's what your mother did. But you've poisoned both our daughters against their own nature. You've made them think they're supposed to be men." Something inside me snapped. 25 years of silence, of swallowing my words, of being what everyone else wanted me to be. It all came rushing up at once. "I was 18 when I married you," I said, my voice shaking with rage. 18 years old, Marcus. I had dreams. I wanted to go to college. I wanted to write, to learn, to be something more than just somebody's wife. But I was told that was selfish. I was told that marriage was what I was supposed to want. So I married you, and I spent 25 years making myself smaller and smaller until there was nothing left of the person I could have been. "You have a good life?" he shouted back. "I provided for you. I gave you a home, children, security. What more did you want?" "I wanted to be seen," I screamed, and I had never raised my voice to him before, not once in all those years. "I wanted to be heard. I wanted to matter as a person, not just as a cook and a maid and a body in your bed. I wanted you to ask me what I thought, what I felt, what I dreamed about. But you never did, Marcus. Not once in 25 years did you ever ask me who I was beyond what I could do for you." He stared at me like I had grown a second head. "You're being hysterical." "No," I said, and my voice was cold now, steady. "I'm being honest. For the first time in our entire marriage, I'm telling you the truth. And the truth is I have been miserable, I have been lonely, I have felt invisible and used and taken for granted every single day of this marriage. And I will not, let you do that to our daughters. Then maybe you should leave," he said. His voice hard and final. "If this life is so awful, then leave." I looked at him for a long moment. 5 years ago that threat would have terrified me. I would have apologized, backed down, made myself small again. But I had read my mother's diary. I had watched my daughters bloom. I had remembered who I was before the world told me I couldn't be. "Maybe I will," I said quietly. His face went pale. He hadn't expected that answer. "You don't mean that," he said, but his voice was uncertain now. "Don't I asked. "What would I be giving up, Marcus? A husband who doesn't talk to me. A marriage where I'm a servant instead of a partner. What exactly am I supposed to be afraid of losing?" "People will talk," he said. "Your family, the church. Everyone will judge you." "Let them," I said. I've spent my whole life worrying about what other people think. I'm done. I didn't leave that night. I didn't leave for a long time actually, because leaving was complicated. I was 40, 3 years old with no education beyond high school, no work experience, no money of my own. Marcus had always controlled the finances, doled out money for groceries and household expenses, but never let me have my own account. But I started planning. I got a job at the local library. Part-time, barely above minimum wage, but it was mine. I opened my own bank account. I started squirreling away money, bit by bit. Marcus was furious. What do you need a job for? What will people think? I don't care what people think, I said, and I meant it. Michelle watched all of this unfold. She was 16 now, old enough to understand what was happening. One night, she came to my room after Marcus had gone to bed. Are you and Daddy getting divorced? She asked, sitting on the edge of my bed. I sighed. I don't know, baby. Maybe. Would that be okay with you? She was quiet for a moment. I think so, she finally said. I don't like how he talks to you. He treats you like you don't matter. And I don't want to ever be treated like that. I pulled her close. You won't be. I promised. You're going to choose someone who sees you, who values you, who treats you like an equal. And if you never want to get married at all, that's okay too. You get to choose. She asked softly. No. I admitted. I didn't. But that's why I'm fighting so hard to make sure you do. Ruby came to visit that Christmas. She took one look at the tension in my house and pulled me aside. Leave him, she said bluntly. Amara, you've been dying slowly in this marriage for 25 years. Leave. I'm working on it, I said. I'm saving money. I'm making a plan. How long are you going to plan? She interrupted. Another year, 5 years? How much of your life are you willing to waste? I wasted the first 25 years, I said bitterly. What's a little longer? She grabbed my hands. You haven't wasted anything. You raised 2 incredible daughters. You broke the cycle that destroyed you and Mama. You survived. But Amara, survival isn't the same as living. Don't you want to actually live, even if it's just for a few years before you're too old to enjoy it? Her words haunted me. Don't you want to actually live? Could I? I was 43 years old. My best years were behind me, used up in service to a man who never loved me as a person, only as a function. But maybe there was still time for something more. My mother came to visit in February. She looked older, more fragile. She sat at my kitchen table, and for a long time she didn't say anything. Then, finally, I'm sorry. I looked up, shocked. What? I'm sorry, she repeated, and her eyes were filled with tears. You were right. I did betray you. I did to you what was done to me, and I told myself it was love when it was really fear. I was afraid you'd get hurt if you reached for more. Afraid you'd end up disappointed and alone. So I made you small, and I called it protection. I felt my own tears start to fall. Mama, let me finish, she said. I see what you're doing with Jessica and Michelle. I see them thriving, dreaming, becoming, and I realize that could have been you. That should have been you. But I took that away from you, and I can never give it back. All I can do is say I'm sorry and tell you that it's not too late. You can still choose something different. I reached across the table and took her hand. I whispered, I'm trying. Then try harder, she said fiercely. Don't end up like me, Amara. Don't wake up at 70 years old and realize your whole life was lived for other people. Be selfish. Choose yourself. It's not too late. That conversation changed something in me. My mother, the woman who had spent her whole life teaching me to be selfless, was telling me to be selfish. She was giving me permission to choose myself. So I did. I left Marcus 3 months after my 44th birthday. It wasn't dramatic. There was no big fight, no final confrontation. I simply packed my things one Saturday morning while he was at the hardware store, left a note on the kitchen table, and drove away in the old sedan I had bought with my library money. The note said, I'm done preparing myself for someone else's life. I'm going to find out who I am. Amara. I moved into a tiny 1-bedroom apartment on the other side of town. It had water-stained ceilings and thin walls, and the heat didn't always work right. But it was mine. Every stick of furniture, every dish, every decision, mine. Michelle was 17 by then, finishing her senior year of high school. She chose to stay with Marcus during the week for school, but spent most weekends with me. Jessica came home from college and cried when she saw my little apartment, but they were happy tears. I'm proud of you, Mom, she said, hugging me tight. You finally chose yourself. The church was scandalized. Women I had known for years crossed the street to avoid talking to me. My mother's friends called me selfish, ungrateful, a bad example. But I noticed something: the younger women, the ones my age and younger, they looked at me differently. Some of them even approached me quietly, asked me how I did it, told me they understood. Marcus tried to fight the divorce at first. He hired a lawyer, threatened to take everything, told people I had abandoned my family. But Michelle stood up in court, 17 years old and fierce, and told the judge that I had finally found the courage to save myself and that Marcus had been emotionally absent for years. The divorce was finalized when I was 45. I got half of everything, which wasn't much, but it was enough. I enrolled in community college that fall. At 45 years old, I sat in classrooms with people young enough to be my children, and I learned. I took English classes, writing classes, literature classes, all the things I had dreamed about when I was 18. My first essay came back with an A+ and a note from the professor. You have a powerful voice. Don't waste it. I cried in my car for 20 minutes after reading those words. A powerful voice. Me, the woman who had spent decades learning to be silent. I worked at the library during the day and went to school at night. It was exhausting, but it was mine. I was building something that belonged only to me. Michelle graduated high school with honors and went to study engineering at the same university where Jessica was finishing her veterinary degree. My daughters, both of them in college, both of them chasing their dreams. I had done that. I had broken the cycle. Ruby moved back to town when I was 47. She had gotten divorced herself. Turns out I'm better at being my own person than being somebody's wife, she said with a laugh, and she wanted to be closer to family. We became closer than we'd ever been. She helped me study for exams. I helped her start her own consulting business. We were two women in our 40s, finally living the lives we should have been allowed to live all along. My mother's health started failing when I was 50. She had COPD from years of living with my father's secondhand smoke, and her lungs were giving out. I visited her every day in the hospital during those final weeks. Did you find it? She asked me one afternoon, her voice weak and raspy. Find what, Mama? Yourself. Did you find out who you are? I thought about it. At 50 years old, I had an associate's degree in English. I had been promoted to head librarian. I had my own apartment, my own life, my own voice. I wrote essays and short stories that sometimes got published in small literary magazines. I had friends who valued me for my mind, not just my cooking. Yes, I told her. I think I did. She smiled and I saw relief in her eyes. Good, she whispered. That's good. I'm sorry it took so long. My too, I said, holding her hand. But Mama, I forgive you. I understand now. You did what you thought was right, even if it was wrong. And I broke the cycle. Jessica and Michelle, they're free in ways we never were. That's all that matters, she said. Breaking the cycle. That's the real legacy. She died 2 days later, and at her funeral I stood up and spoke. I told the truth about her lost dreams, about the nursing school she never attended, about the sacrifice she made and then passed on to me. Some people looked uncomfortable. But several younger women came up to me afterward, tears in their eyes, thanking me for speaking about things no one ever talked about. Jessica graduated from veterinary school when I was 52. She opened her own practice when she was 28, and she's never been married. Maybe someday, she tells me, but only if I find someone who sees me as an equal. Otherwise, I'm happy on my own. Michelle got her engineering degree and now designs sustainable energy systems. She's married to a man who cooks dinner 3 nights a week and thinks her brain is the sexiest thing about her. They're partners, truly partners, in ways Marcus and I never were. I'm 67 years old now. I have grandchildren. Michelle has 2 daughters, and she's raising them to be bold and brave and unapologetically themselves. Jessica might have children someday, or she might not. It's her choice. I never remarried. I dated a few men over the years, but I learned that I'm happier on my own than I ever was trying to fit myself into someone else's expectations. I have my library, my writing, my daughters and grandchildren, my sister, my friends. I have myself. Sometimes, late at night, I think about all the years I lost. I think about the 18-year-old girl who wanted to go to college and study literature. I think about the dreams that died before they ever had a chance to live. I think about my mother's diary, about her lost nursing career, about the cycle of sacrifice and silencing that went back generations. And then I think about my granddaughters. I think about them growing up knowing they can be anything, do anything, choose anything. I think about how they'll never hear the words, "We are preparing you for your husband," as if that's all they're meant to be. The cycle is broken. It cost me half my life to break it. It cost my mother her entire life. But it's broken now, and my daughters and granddaughters are free. That has to mean something. That has to be worth something. I'm 67 years old and I'm finally living my own life. It's not the life I would have chosen if I'd had the choice at 18. But it's mine, and that matters. Last week, I published my first book, a collection of essays about women, sacrifice, and finding yourself after a lifetime of being lost. The dedication reads, for my mother, who couldn't break free. For my daughters, who never had to. And for every woman still learning that choosing herself is not selfish, it's survival. Jessica and Michelle threw me a book launch party at the library. Friends, family, former students, readers, they all came. Michelle gave a speech about how I had saved her by saving myself. Jessica read her favorite essay from the book, the one about my mother's diary. And Ruby stood up and said, My sister spent the first half of her life disappearing. She's spending the second half making sure no one can ever ignore her again. That's not just survival, that's triumph. I cried, of course. But they were good tears, healing tears. Because here's what I've learned in 67 years: it's never too late to choose yourself. It's never too late to find your voice. It's never too late to break the cycle. Yes, I lost years. Yes, I carry scars from the life I was forced to live. Yes, I grieve for the girl I could have been. But I'm still here. I'm still learning. I'm still becoming. And every day I choose myself. Every single day I choose myself. That's the legacy I want to leave. Not perfection, not martyrdom, not sacrifice. But the stubborn, defiant act of choosing yourself, even when the whole world tells you that's wrong. My name is Amara Johnson. I am 67 years old. And I am finally, truly, completely free.